How do you really know you are the only man in her life? It is a heavy question, and if we're being honest, it is a question that has crossed the mind of almost every man at some point in a relationship. Whether you've been dating for a few months or married for decades, there are moments when uncertainty quietly creeps in. You notice a change, a shift in behavior, a feeling you can't quite explain, and suddenly, you start wondering if everything is truly as secure as it seems. The truth is that most people look for dramatic signs when relationships begin to change. They expect obvious clues, shocking discoveries, or undeniable proof. But human psychology rarely works that way. Most relationship problems begin with subtle emotional shifts, long before they become visible on the surface. Long before someone walks away physically, they often begin drifting emotionally. And if you understand female psychology, you can learn to recognize those shifts before they become serious problems. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was off, but you couldn't explain why? Maybe her behavior changed slightly. Maybe conversations felt different. Maybe she seemed distant even while sitting right beside you. If you've ever experienced that feeling, let me know in the comments below. You're definitely not alone. Thousands of men struggle with uncertainty in relationships, and sometimes simply sharing your experience helps others realize they're not the only ones facing these questions. I'm Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel, and today, we're going to explore something most people misunderstand completely. This isn't about becoming paranoid. It isn't about spying, accusing, or assuming the worst. In fact, some of the behaviors people often label as red flags can have perfectly innocent explanations. Instead, we're going to talk about the deeper psychological patterns that reveal whether a woman is emotionally invested, emotionally disconnected, or potentially directing her emotional energy elsewhere. One of the biggest mistakes men make is assuming loyalty can only be measured through words. A woman can tell you she loves you. She can tell you everything is fine. She can reassure you repeatedly, but emotional investment is revealed through behavior over time. Psychologists have long understood that human beings communicate far more through actions than through language. Words can be chosen carefully. Actions are much harder to fake consistently. Think about a simple example. Imagine a husband named David. Every morning before work, his wife asks how he slept. She checks on him throughout the day. She remembers important meetings. She asks questions about his goals and concerns. When he speaks, she genuinely listens. Now imagine another husband who hears, "I love you" every day, but his wife barely pays attention when he talks. She forgets important things. She seems mentally absent during conversations. She shows little curiosity about his life. Which relationship sounds more emotionally connected? Most people immediately recognize the answer, because genuine emotional investment creates attention. Where attention goes, emotional energy follows. And that brings us to the first major psychological sign that deserves attention: a woman's curiosity about your life. This may sound surprisingly simple, but it matters more than most men realize. When a woman feels deeply connected to a man, she naturally becomes interested in his world. She wants to know what excites him, what frustrates him, what he's planning, and what he's worried about. This isn't because she's forcing herself. It's because emotional attachment naturally creates curiosity. Think about the early stages of a relationship. People ask endless questions. What are your dreams? What was your childhood like? How did your meeting go? What happened with your friend? How are you feeling today? The reason is simple. Interest follows emotional investment. Now, of course, long-term relationships don't maintain that same honeymoon level intensity forever. Life gets busy, responsibilities increase, routines develop, but emotional curiosity never disappears completely when genuine connection remains. If you find that your partner has gradually stopped showing interest in your experiences, your thoughts, your goals, and your feelings, that doesn't automatically mean she's interested in someone else, but it does signal that something important may be changing emotionally. And that's where many men make a critical mistake. Instead of addressing emotional distance, they focus entirely on physical behaviors. They ask questions like, is she texting someone? Who is she talking to? Where is she going? But often, the deeper issue began much earlier. It started when emotional connection quietly weakened. A relationship counselor once shared a story about a couple married for 22 years. The husband became convinced his wife was cheating. He monitored her schedule. He analyzed every text notification. He scrutinized every late arrival home. After months of anxiety, they eventually entered counseling. What emerged was surprising. There was no affair, no secret relationship, no hidden man. The real problem was that they had stopped emotionally engaging with each other years earlier. She felt unseen. He felt unappreciated. Both were lonely while living in the same house. The suspicion wasn't created by infidelity. It was created by emotional disconnection. And this highlights something extremely important. Many of the signs people associate with cheating are actually signs of relationship dissatisfaction. The distinction matters, because the solution is completely different. Another psychological shift worth paying attention to involves responsiveness. Not perfection. Not constant availability. Responsiveness. There is a difference. Healthy adults have busy lives. They work. They have responsibilities. They get tired. No reasonable person expects immediate replies every minute of every day. But emotionally invested people generally make an effort to reconnect. They circle back. They respond. They remember. They engage. A woman who values the relationship usually demonstrates that through consistent effort. Again, not perfect effort, human effort. There's a huge difference. Many viewers watching right now may recognize this dynamic. Maybe conversations have become shorter. Maybe she seems distracted. Maybe meaningful discussions are constantly postponed. Maybe every serious conversation feels like an inconvenience. When this becomes a persistent pattern, it deserves attention, not because it proves anything, but because it reveals something. Relationships thrive when both people continue choosing each other emotionally, and that choice becomes visible through small, daily interactions. Now here's something fascinating that relationship researchers have observed. The strongest relationships are not built on grand romantic gestures. They're built on tiny moments of connection. A smile, a question, a shared joke, a thoughtful message, a brief touch on the shoulder, a few minutes of genuine listening. These moments may seem insignificant, but they function like emotional deposits into a relationship account. When those deposits happen consistently, trust grows, connection grows, security grows. When they disappear entirely, emotional distance begins expanding, and often, neither partner notices until the gap becomes enormous. Let me tell you about another example. A man named Robert described feeling increasingly disconnected from his wife. Nothing dramatic happened. There were no major arguments, no obvious betrayals, no shocking discoveries. Yet something felt different. When they eventually discussed it openly, his wife admitted something surprising. She wasn't angry. She wasn't interested in another man. She was exhausted. For years, she had been carrying stress from work, aging parents, financial concerns, and personal worries she never shared. Her emotional withdrawal wasn't rejection. It was overwhelm. That conversation changed everything. Why? Because they stopped guessing, and they started communicating. One of the greatest dangers in relationships is assumption. The human brain hates uncertainty. When we don't know what's happening, we create stories. Sometimes those stories are accurate. Sometimes they're completely wrong. That's why emotionally intelligent relationships prioritize clarity over assumptions. Instead of acting like detectives, healthy partners become communicators. They ask questions, they listen, they seek understanding, and perhaps most importantly, they create emotional safety. Because here's something many men never hear. A woman who feels emotionally safe is far more likely to be transparent. When she feels judged, attacked, or constantly interrogated, she becomes defensive. When she feels heard, respected, and understood, openness becomes easier. This doesn't mean ignoring red flags. It means creating conditions where honesty can exist. And honesty is the foundation of trust. Now let's talk about another subtle psychological shift that often gets overlooked: validation. Every human being seeks validation. Men seek it, women seek it. We all want to feel appreciated, admired, respected, and valued. The question isn't whether someone wants validation. The question is where they're seeking it. In a healthy relationship, much of that validation comes from the partnership itself. A compliment from your partner matters. Their opinion matters. Their appreciation matters. Their attention matters. When emotional bonds are strong, partners naturally look to each other for affirmation. But when emotional needs go unmet for extended periods, people often begin seeking validation elsewhere. Sometimes it's through friendships. Sometimes it's through social media. Sometimes it's through work achievements. And yes, sometimes it can involve romantic attention from others. The important point is that validation seeking doesn't begin with attraction. It usually begins with emotional hunger. And emotional hunger often develops long before anyone notices it. This is why strong relationships require ongoing maintenance. Not because people are weak, not because love isn't real, but because emotional connection needs nourishment, just like physical health, just like friendships, just like family bonds. The strongest couples understand that love isn't merely a feeling. It's a continuous process of attention, effort, understanding, and emotional investment. Next, we're going to explore several additional psychological behaviors that reveal where a woman's emotional focus truly lies, including changes in secrecy, communication patterns, personal boundaries, and the surprising behavior that relationship experts often identify as one of the strongest predictors of emotional distance. Before we continue, if you found value in this conversation so far, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. And I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. What do you think is the biggest sign that someone is emotionally invested in a relationship? Your answer might help someone else see their own relationship in a completely new way. One of the most misunderstood aspects of female psychology is secrecy. Many people assume that privacy and secrecy are the same thing, but psychologically, they are very different. Every healthy individual deserves a degree of personal privacy. We all have thoughts, conversations, and personal moments that belong to us. A woman maintaining healthy boundaries is not automatically hiding something. In fact, mature relationships often thrive because both partners respect each other's individuality. However, secrecy begins when transparency disappears. Secrecy isn't about having private thoughts. It's about actively concealing information that could affect the relationship. And here's where things become interesting. When emotional investment in a relationship starts declining, people often become increasingly protective of parts of their lives that were once openly shared. You may notice fewer details about their day, fewer stories, fewer spontaneous conversations, less willingness to discuss what they're feeling. Again, this doesn't automatically mean another person is involved, but it does indicate emotional withdrawal. Think about the difference between a closed door and a locked vault. A closed door simply means someone needs space. A locked vault suggests someone is afraid of what might be discovered. The distinction matters, and often the strongest indicator isn't the behavior itself. It's the emotional reactions surrounding it. For example, imagine asking a simple question. How was your day? A woman who feels connected usually welcomes the opportunity to share. She may not tell you everything, but she participates in the conversation. When emotional distance grows, even simple questions can feel intrusive. Responses become shorter. Conversations become transactional. Curiosity disappears from both sides. What was once connection starts feeling like coexistence. And that transition often happens so gradually that neither person notices until the relationship feels emotionally cold. Relationship researchers frequently discuss something called emotional bids. An emotional bid is any attempt to connect. A smile, a joke, a question, a story, a touch, a glance across the room. Every day, couples make hundreds of emotional bids without realizing it. The health of the relationship often depends on how frequently those bids are accepted. Imagine a husband who says, "You'll never believe what happened at work today." That sentence isn't really about work. It's an invitation. It's a request for connection. If his partner looks up, listens, and engages, the relationship grows stronger. If she consistently ignores, dismisses, or avoids those moments, emotional distance slowly expands. The same applies in reverse. One of the strongest signs that a woman remains emotionally invested is that she continues making bids for your attention. She wants to tell you stories. She wants your opinion. She wants to share experiences. She wants you involved in her emotional world. When those invitations stop entirely, it deserves attention, not panic, attention. Because every relationship experiences seasons. People become stressed, life becomes complicated, health challenges emerge, families create pressure, financial burdens appear. The goal isn't to react to every temporary shift. The goal is to recognize long-term patterns. Let me share a story. A man named Michael became convinced his marriage was failing. His wife seemed distant. Conversations felt shorter. Date nights disappeared. He spent months obsessing over worst-case scenarios. Eventually, instead of accusing her, he chose a different approach. One evening, he simply asked, "When was the last time you felt truly understood by me?" The question caught her completely off guard, and then she cried. Not because she was hiding another relationship, not because she was guilty, because nobody had asked how she felt in years. That single conversation revealed months of loneliness neither partner had recognized. Their problem wasn't betrayal, it was emotional neglect. And emotional neglect often masquerades as something much more dramatic. This is why assumptions are dangerous. The stories we tell ourselves are rarely as accurate as the conversations we're avoiding. Now let's discuss something that often reveals where a woman's emotional priorities truly are: her willingness to include you in her future. Psychologically speaking, people naturally make plans around what they value. Listen carefully to how she talks about the future. Does she use words like we and us? Does she include you in upcoming events? Does she discuss future goals together? Does she imagine experiences that involve both of you? These may seem like small details, but they're incredibly revealing. When a woman sees you as an important part of her future, her language reflects it. The future becomes shared. When emotional investment weakens, future planning often becomes increasingly individual. The language shifts, the vision changes, the partnership becomes less central. Again, this isn't proof of anything by itself, but patterns matter. One isolated behavior means very little. Multiple consistent patterns tell a story. Another important area involves conflict. Most people believe that constant arguments indicate relationship problems. Surprisingly, psychology suggests something more nuanced. Couples who never argue are not necessarily healthier than couples who do. What matters is how conflict is handled. A woman who still cares about the relationship usually continues engaging during disagreements. She argues because the outcome matters to her. She wants improvement. She wants resolution. She wants change. Indifference is often more concerning than conflict. When someone emotionally checks out, they stop fighting for the relationship. They stop trying to solve problems. They stop investing effort. Everything becomes fine. Not because things are fine, because they no longer care enough to engage. This is why emotional apathy can be more dangerous than temporary frustration. Anger still contains emotional energy. Indifference often signals its absence. If you've ever experienced this dynamic, you know exactly what it feels like. You're having a conversation that should matter, yet the other person seems emotionally absent, detached, uninterested, disconnected. It's one of the loneliest feelings in the world, and here's something many viewers need to hear. If you're constantly searching for proof that someone loves you, the relationship may already need attention. Healthy relationships create security through consistency. You don't need endless reassurance because their behavior provides it naturally. Trust isn't built through surveillance. It's built through repeated experiences of reliability, through honesty, through transparency, through emotional presence, and perhaps most importantly, through mutual effort. Because effort reveals priorities, always. People make time for what matters to them. They invest energy into what matters to them. They protect what matters to them. And they nurture what matters to them. This principle applies to careers, friendships, families, and relationships. The strongest sign that a woman is genuinely invested in you isn't found in a single behavior. It's found in consistent patterns of care. She listens. She communicates. She includes you. She supports you. She respects you. She makes room for you in her life, and she continues choosing the relationship even when life becomes difficult. That's what genuine commitment looks like. Not perfection, not constant romance, not dramatic declarations. Consistency. Day after day, month after month, year after year. Before we finish, I want to leave you with a question. Instead of asking, how do I know if she's loyal, consider asking something deeper. Are we actively building a relationship that inspires loyalty? Because loyalty doesn't grow in fear. It grows in connection. It grows in trust. It grows in mutual respect. It grows when two people continuously choose each other, not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to. And if today's conversation resonated with you, let us know in the comments below. What do you believe is the most important ingredient in a lasting relationship? Your experience could help someone who is struggling right now. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who values strong, healthy relationships. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.